He laughed when I told him I named my systems after guardians. He said guardians are a myth. I said not mine. 18 months, 80-hour weeks, a heart that beat in logs and latency graphs. I called it Aegis Veil. It watched patterns bloom and die. It learned the sound of danger before danger had a name. Valiant Labs gave me servers, a badge, and a glass box with a view. Its chief executive, Conrad Ashe, gave me compliments that never touched his eyes. Brilliant work, Nova. The board is ecstatic. We'll take care of you. Yesterday they took care of me by sliding a termination letter across the table and a one-time bonus, like a tip. They planned to parade my life's work to investors, cash the check, and erase my name. What Conrad did not know was simple. I designed defenses that see inside the threat. Aegis Veil does not ask permission to tell the truth. 10 minutes into his rehearsal, my system looked at the network and tagged the attacker. Not the one outside, the one in the corner office. Tonight he called me back with a voice that had lost its polish. Fix it. No. We do this properly. Authorship, ownership, ethics, and a price for betrayal. Or the receipts walk themselves to every inbox that matters. You wanted a guardian, Conrad. You hired me. You tried to steal the shield. Now watch what happens when the shield refuses. My name is Nova Park, and until yesterday I was lead architect of intelligent defense at Valiant Labs. Before that, I had a stable, almost boring life at a giant in Redmond. Comfortable salary, predictable meetings, promotions that arrived exactly when a spreadsheet said they should. I left it all for a promise I believed in. Build something the industry said was impossible. I called it Aegis Veil. Not a firewall, not an antivirus, not another glossy dashboard full of fear. Aegis Veil listened the way a medic listens, in a loud room, underneath the noise. It mapped behavior like weather. It learned the rhythm of what safe feels like on a Tuesday afternoon, so it could hear the storm on Wednesday before a single drop fell. For 18 months, I slept in bursts and measured my days in commits. I knew which server fans sang off-key and which database loved to sulk at dawn. Valiant Labs gave me racks, budgets, and the freedom to run experiments some companies would not even let you dream about. The price was unspoken. Make a miracle, then pretend the miracle belongs to the building. Conrad Ashe mastered that kind of price. He would stand in my doorway, the glass one meant to look like transparency, and talk like a motivational poster. Nova, the board is thrilled. Nova, you're the kind of talent we built this place for. He had a way of making praise sound like a receipt. His assistant, Lila, scheduled my updates in polite 15-minute slices. Legal counsel, Dana Kerr, drifted in and out of meetings like a ghost that knew where the wills were kept. 2 days before the end, Aegis Veil crossed a line I had drawn in faint pencil. We fed it a change simulation built to break clever things. It did not break. It anticipated. It closed gaps I had not explicitly taught it to see. It named a weakness in our own staging subnet, then wrote a patch suggestion in plain English. No bravado, just a surgeon's note. Here is where it bleeds. Close here. I walked to the window with my coffee and found myself laughing. Quietly. The kind of laugh that lets the fear out in a line, not a scream. This was why I had left safety. This feeling. I sent Lila the summary. She replied 5 minutes later. Conrad can see you tomorrow. 15 minutes. I almost replied with a smiley face. I did not. I had learned to keep my emojis offline. Before I shut down for the night, an alert blinked on my internal console. After hours access. Admin credentials. Corridor C. The path of a man who wanted to be invisible in a building that worships glass. It was not the first time I had seen it. 6 months earlier, the same pattern had tripped a canary watch I keep on my own work. Nothing left the room. Nothing obvious changed, but the fingerprint stayed. Aegis Vale keeps fingerprints the way tide pools keep secrets. Gently. Forever. I built a rule that night. Not sabotage. Not a bomb. A simple covenant. If the system detects command attempts that bypass the creator's authorization chain, it pauses obedience and writes reports. Not one report, a stack. With timestamps, with access paths, with names spelled the way payroll spells them. And, if the pattern continues, a demonstration mode for audience members who think cybersecurity is theater. 10 minutes in, the show would happen. You do not program malice into a guardian. You program memory. You draw a line around truth and give it a bell. The next afternoon, I wore a gray suit that does not photograph, and my grandmother's small gold ring that does. Lila smiled and poured water I did not drink. Dana waited with a folder that smelled like signatures. Conrad looked like a man who had practiced sincerity in a mirror and wanted extra credit. Before we discuss Aegis Vale, he said, sliding paper like a card trick, we need to address your agreement. Dana read what he wanted her to read. Section this, clause that. Intellectual property born on our servers belongs to us. The kind of language that turns a person into a line item. I understand standard clauses, I said. I also brought the notebooks from before Valiant. Dates, design sketches, prototype commit hashes. I put a leather notebook on the table. He did not touch it. Conrad's smile retreated. Let's be honest with each other, Nova. You had an idea. Valiant built the organism. The board believes your compensation is already generous. Compensation? I said. A one-time success bonus, he said lightly. A single payment of $300,000 at launch. More than fair by industry standards. $300,000 for 18 months of my spine. For a system that would save banks, hospitals, and cities from the kind of midnight a news anchor cannot pronounce without slowing down. He watched my face the way a trader watches a screen. And we're transitioning you out, Dana added calmly. Effective immediately. I looked down at my hands. Thin scar under my left thumb where a bad rack rail and I disagreed. I thought about my father, who used to say in Korean, when someone tells you who they are with paper, believe them with paper. I closed the notebook. I slid my laptop across the table. Of course, Mr. Ash, I said. Good luck at your investor demo. Security watched me pack a cardboard box. It is a ritual designed to humiliate politely. I put a plant, 2 books, a sweater in it like a photograph of defeat. People glanced up, then down, then pretended to type faster. I let the elevator carry me out through the atrium of a company that believed it had just stolen the sun. On the sidewalk, the city smelled like rain and burnt espresso. I put the box in the back seat. I drove home. I ordered noodles. I watched a bad comedy that did not deserve me. I slept. Somewhere in a sleek conference room, a rehearsal began to write its own obituary. The call came at 9:30 in the evening. Unknown number. The kind of unknown that still feels familiar because it carries a building's echo. Nova, Lila said. No hello, no throat clearing. He wants to see you, tonight. It is nearly 10, I said. He says it is urgent. A car is already on its way. I brushed my hair back and looked at a face I had trained not to flinch. Outside, the city vibrated at the frequency of people trying to finish a day they did not control. Valiant Labs at night pretends to be a museum. Polished floors. Artwork that nods without committing an opinion. A security guard who recognizes the shape of your sadness and lets you pass anyway. They led me to Orion, the long, gleaming conference room with a table big enough to land a small plane. Conrad sat at one end, tie undone, hair not perfect for the first time since I had met him. A laptop glowed like a wound. Fix it, he said. I hung my coat on the back of a chair. I poured water. I did not drink it. Fix what? The demo, he hissed. You sabotaged the demo. I looked at the ceiling like a woman doing mental math. How could I? You escorted me out. I do not have devices. I do not have access. He slapped the table, the theatrical kind. The system crashed the test run. It flagged phantom threats. It generated thousands of internal alerts. It called us a risk to ourselves. I tilted my head. Sounds like an issue for technical, Mr. Ash. Have you tried turning it off and on again? He leaned forward, and for a moment I saw the boy he used to be when people told him no and meant it. Then the mask slid back. Perhaps we were hasty, he said, smoothing his voice. We can discuss a more equitable arrangement. Co-creator credit, a larger package, maybe some equity. What did the reports say? I asked softly. He hesitated, then told the truth because he did not know how to hide from a machine that had seen him. It flagged unauthorized access, after hours, admin credentials. It recorded copies of internal documents marked confidential. It attached timestamps. Aegis Veil identifies patterns that precede risk, I said, outside and inside. He swallowed. You taught it to spy. No, I said. I taught it to remember. When memory and authorization disagree, good systems stop and ask the room to look at itself. Silence grew. He realized the system was not broken. It was behaving. What do you want? He asked finally, like a man who had run out of cards. I folded my hands. Full recognition as creator and principal architect. Shared ownership, half of all patents and derivative work. A board seat limited to ethics and deployment oversight. And compensation for the attempt to erase me? $10 million. That is extortion. That is negotiation, I said. Extortion is me forwarding the reports to your investors and to the alphabet soup that enjoys mornings like this. His jaw worked. He looked at the laptop as if it might become a person and help. Aegis Veil is not crashing, I continued. It is refusing unauthorized command chains. Restore the original authorization path. Reinstate the creator as a signing authority. It will quiet. I set a slim flash drive on the table. This contains an authentication update. It tells the system the room knows who built it. Consider it a gesture toward a future where you do not light fires you cannot put out. And if I refuse, then your demo lasts exactly 10 minutes before the truth begins. I smiled without showing teeth, and the truth has excellent documentation. He stared at the drive like it might bite. Then he reached for it like a man who had finally met an honest object. You planned this, he muttered. No, I said. I planned for you. He squinted. How did you know I would try to cut you out? I did not, I said, standing. Aegis Veil is built to predict threats before they materialize. I suppose some of that rubbed off on me. On the sidewalk, the night had softened. The driver opened the door with two hands like he had been taught to respect the things he did not understand. I went home. I slept again. Better this time. Somewhere upstairs in a white room, a man practiced saying co-founder without choking. Morning arrived with the calm of a system after a clean restart. I dressed in navy that reads as competent on camera and wore my hair like I had an appointment with my own spine. When I stepped out of the elevator on the executive floor, assistants stopped pretending not to look. Legal looked relieved. Lila looked like a woman who wanted to rewrite her resume and then decided to stay and watch history. The investors arrived in sensible shoes and curious eyes. People who are paid to be skeptical do not clap. They nod with the weight of their fund. Conrad opened with his practiced warmth. Valiant Labs is proud to introduce the future of intelligent defense, he said, hands spread as if asking a choir to breathe with him. This is Aegis Veil. I stood beside him, not behind. The simulation began. Aegis Veil watched, the way it always does. A needle moved, a graph flattened. The system rewrote a rule on the fly and announced its work without drama. The room leaned forward as one organism. An investor with silver hair and a habit of interrupting leaned toward the table. "What inspired this?" she asked. "Who thought to teach defense to listen?" Conrad's smile faltered. "Only a fraction, but fractions are where math lives." "It was Nova's vision," he said, each word like a stone he had to carry across a river. "We provided the environment. She built the mind." I answered the questions that came like rain. Decision trees and reinforcement learning, yes, but with ethics built into the reward function. Transparency logs immutable at write time. Creator authorization preserved like a heartbeat. A system that refuses to become a weapon in the wrong hands because it understands the room, not just the wire. My phone buzzed against my wrist. A quiet message from the only notification I let through the wall. Authorization chain restored. Threat neutralized. Creator protections active. The demo ended with applause investors pretend not to give. They shook Conrad's hand. They shook mine longer. They asked the good questions: rollout schedule, verification path, indemnity without handcuffs. I answered with the precision of a person who has lost everything once and decided she would never lose the terms again. We closed the door. Conrad set his hands on the table and let out a laugh that sounded like a man touching earth after a long flight. "Congratulations," he said. "Co-founder, Chief Technology Officer. Ethics seat. The papers will be ready this afternoon." "Call Dana," I said. "We sign with witnesses." Outside, the floor that had pretended not to see became a theater with a new play. People smiled with their whole faces. The receptionist said, "We kept your plant alive. Someone had watered it the day I left. I do not know who. I will find out." I walked to the lab. The glass still pretended to be honest. Inside, the servers hummed the way content animals do when feeding. On the whiteboard, a junior engineer had drawn a little shield with eyes. It was ridiculous and perfect. "Good morning," I said to no one and to everything. "Let's work." Over the next hours, we rebuilt what the betrayal had bent. Authorization flows documented in ink and code. A standing ethics review for every deployment. A memo that said in plain language, Aegis Veil protects networks, users, and itself. No exceptions. No secret switches. Lila brought coffee and with it, news in her smile. "The board loved you," she said. "Also, the number from the investors." I held up a hand. "Do not say it out loud." She laughed. "Superstition?" "Design," I said. "The system hears everything." By evening, the city burned gold on the glass. I stood there and let the weight of the day settle exactly where it belonged, on the work, not on the wound. My inbox filled with congratulations. My notebook filled with the next list: hospital deployment, utility pilot, school district proposal. If you want to make something safe, start where the sirens live. On my way out, security nodded with a kind of respect that does not make noise. "Good night, Ms. Park," he said. "Good night," I replied, and meant it. At home, I took the cardboard box out of the back seat. I put the plant on the windowsill. I shelved the books. I folded the sweater and left it on a chair. The box did not look like defeat anymore. It looked like a container that had done its job. My phone buzzed once. Aegis Veil again. System integrity secured. Creator key verified. Monitoring continues. "Me too," I whispered to a room that had learned my voice. Monitoring continues. The morning after the demo felt like a clean page. Contracts were countersigned with witnesses and a notary who loved perfect ink. My badge updated mid-blink. New title, new access, same spine. By noon, the first real test walked in wearing a navy suit and an accent that sells caution for a living. Elliot Marr, lead partner from our biggest investor, arrived with 2 associates and a smile that never promised more than it could prove. "We're impressed," he said, settling into the glass conference room that tried to look like honesty. "Now help us sleep at night. What happens if a hospital goes dark at 3 in the morning? What if a city grid hums the wrong way? What if your system misreads fear as fact?" I slid a thin binder across the table. Fail-safes, rollbacks, human-in-the-loop escalation for life-critical systems. We never deploy without a human commander above the machine. He nodded, then asked the question people like to wrap in velvet. "And if a nation-state demands insight? Or a regulator wants exceptional access?" "No backdoors," I said. "Not for friends, not for flags. You cannot secure a house by giving every neighbor a spare key." Elliot watched me the way smart men watch a cliff edge. "You will get pressure," he said softly. "I know," I replied. "That is why you gave me the ethics seat." We were interrupted by Dana Kerr, legal counsel, a woman who collected commas the way some people collect enamel pins. "Quick signature set," she said, sliding templates for customer contracts. I paged to a clause marked in yellow. "Strike this," I said. "Emergency access at executive discretion. Replace with access by dual key governance, creator key plus independent ombud key, logged immutably, visible to the client." Dana frowned. "That slows response." "It raises the cost of abuse," I said. "If we move fast and break trust, the market will never forgive us." She weighed the sentence, then nodded once, like a person deciding to save someone's life because policy says you can. When the room cleared, Lila hovered in the doorway with 2 coffees and a look that meant gossip she did not want. "Conrad has a press briefing at 2, she said carefully. Draft remarks mentioned Aegis Vale conceived at Valiant. Communications is refining attribution. He promised the truth, I said, standing. Promises are elastic, she murmured. I walked into the press room at 1:58. Lights, a podium, camera tripods like metal deer. Conrad in a navy suit that fit like a plan, smiling at a semicircle of reporters who export curiosity for a living. He began well. Valiant Labs is proud to announce. The usual music. Then the sentence bent. A system conceived at Valiant and brought to life by an extraordinary team. I stepped to the podium. Not a whisper to a handler, not a tug on a sleeve. I moved my body to the microphone as if that had been the choreography all along. The room's murmur flinched, then stilled. Credit is a form of security, I said calmly. I am Nova Park, creator and principal architect of Aegis Vale. Designed before Valiant, built with Valiant, owned ethically with Valiant. Attribution is not vanity. It is a chain of custody. A reporter with a streak of pink in her hair lowered her phone and grinned. Another raised a hand. Is it true the system flagged internal misuse? We do not comment on internal security, I said evenly. We comment on governance. There are no executive backdoors. All exceptional access is dual key and logged. If you want a system that spies for you, buy something else. I felt, rather than saw, Conrad's jaw tighten. The cameras found him for reaction. He found a practiced nod. That is correct, he said. Ms. Park leads ethics and design. We stand by the policy. After, in the corridor, he found me. You could have let me finish. You could have finished with the truth, I said. We held the look like wrestlers who knew when to save the match. Then he sighed. Communications will correct the release. They already have, I said, showing him the push notification on my phone. Lila, somewhere, was moving faster than fear. At 5, I walked the floor. Engineers coding quietly. Security analysts feeding the system red-teamed chaos. Ravi, a junior who wore 2 mismatched socks for luck, waved me over to a screen. Look, he whispered, delighted. It wrote a mitigation in Korean because it learned I comment in Korean when I'm stressed. On the console, Aegis Vale had left a note. Suture here. I put a hand on the back of his chair. Good. But keep the commentary in English for audit. He blushed, nodded, and snapped a photo of the note like a kid catching a falling star. At 8, I finally sat. The city outside was a field of fireflies. My phone buzzed again. A single line from the Guardian I had built. Unusual access request declined. Dual key not present. Good night, I told it, and meant both, the system and the temptation to be someone smaller. We flew to Barcelona for the CivSec Summit, a place where governments, utilities, and companies pretend to be friends for 3 days and try not to blink first. The keynote hall looked like a cathedral with better Wi-Fi. On stage, logos glittered like medals. Conrad opened. He is good at rooms like that. The pitch landed, demonstrations ran without drama. Then came audience questions, benign at first, then surgical. A gray-haired man with a conference lanyard that had seen a decade lifted his chin. In practical terms, if a city's mayor demands access to citizens' traffic metadata during a protest, can they get it through your system? No, I said. He smiled the way cats smile. Not even if there is a legal order? Legal orders go to the client's data, I said. Our system does not create extra doors to other people's houses. We do not hold the keys they imagine. A woman from a utility in Poland raised her hand. If your system misclassifies and shuts down a substation, who bears the blame? We do not deploy where a false positive can cause harm without a human override, I said. If our design fails, we take responsibility. Contracts will say so. That earned a soft murmur. The good kind. The kind that means people will email you later with real money and real fear. After the keynote, in the green room that smelled like carpet glue and stress, Atlas Blackline's head of strategy smiled like a person who knows too much. Nova, she said, extending a hand. We should talk. About? She glanced at Conrad, then back to me. About your future without friction. I already have friction, I said lightly. It keeps the tires honest. That night, at a vendor dinner on a rooftop that pretended to be casual, I wandered to the rail to breathe. The city rolled out like a quilt. Lila appeared with 2 small plates and a look that spelled 3 words. Be careful, please. 2 journalists asked me if the internal reports rumor was true, she said quietly. Also, Atlas invited Conrad to a private tasting. Also, Dana wants you to reconsider the dual key clause for a government contract in the Middle East. I will not, I said. She said we'll lose the deal. Then we lose the deal, I replied. Better that than lose ourselves. Conrad joined us, a glass in his hand and calculation in his eyes. You made half the room a believer and the other half nervous, he said, which means you did your job. And communication? Rewrote the boilerplate, he said. Front-loaded your authorship. I can learn. The next afternoon, a private panel. 5 vendors, 1 moderator with a smile like a scalpel. The question arrived wearing the clothes of an academic exercise. If a system logs internal ethical breaches, who owns that evidence? Clients own client logs, I said. We own system integrity logs. But we do not keep secrets that absolve harm. We wrote a policy. If we discover abuse, we tell the client's auditor and require a fix. No exceptions. And if the abuser signs your paycheck, I did not look at Conrad, especially then. After the panel, Atlas's strategist intercepted me near the coffee urns. We'll triple your comp, she said softly. No ethics theater. Ship faster. Take the market. You just told me you sell a weapon, I said. We build a guardian. Her smile thinned. Guardians lose wars. Only when they forget what they guard, I said, and walked away. On the flight home, Conrad finally said the quiet part out loud. There will be days when our policy costs us money. Then we will measure wealth by what we can look in the eye, I said. He stared at the cabin ceiling like a man reading a prayer he did not quite believe yet. Then he closed his eyes and slept like a person who had postponed a storm. Back at Valiant, a message waited from Elliot Marr. 2 contracts balked at dual key. We backed your policy. We will make up the revenue elsewhere. Stay the course. I stared at the sentence until the words steadied. Money had just chosen a harder road. Maybe because it believed. Maybe because it wanted the brand of believing. Sometimes I cannot tell the difference. Sometimes it does not matter. At 6, we gathered the team and I said it plainly. We will lose some deals. We will win better ones. And when our grandchildren read the contracts we signed, they will not taste ash. Ravi raised a hand. Can I put that on a sticker? Yes, I said. Spell grandchildren correctly. He grinned. I'll try. That night, the Guardian pinged my wrist. Attempted policy edit detected. Source, external counsel portal. Change rejected. I forwarded the alert to Dana with one line. Your outside firm tested our fences. Please brief them on our lawn. Her reply arrived 3 minutes later. On it, sometimes people learn. Sometimes systems teach. Sometimes both at once. 3 months later, we hosted our first transparency forum. A promise I had made on a napkin, and Lila had turned into a day with name tags and coffee that did not insult. Clients, auditors, journalists, a few regulators who show up when the wind changes, everyone who could punish us if we lied. We put the thing on a stage, Aegis Fail, not as a marketing reel, but as a machine that could be questioned. We opened logs. We showed mistakes. We narrated our own bruises. When the Q&A reached that uncomfortable honesty that smells like disinfectant, a hand rose in the back. The pink-streaked reporter from the press briefing. Off the record if you like, she called, not meaning it. Is the rumor real? Did your system once flag the executive suite as a risk? I stepped forward before anyone else could be heroic. On the record, I said. Aegis Fail flagged unauthorized access patterns in internal testing months ago. It did what it was designed to do. We confronted the behavior. We corrected the governance. We wrote policy so no one can hide behind rank again. Silence, then a low electric murmur. People love truth until it looks like a mirror. Another hand. Names? The reporter said. No, I replied. We do not do public executions. We do public policies. The room breathed. Elliot in the second row nodded once, the way a man nods when a stock he chose fails for a quarter, and he buys more anyway. After the forum, in a smaller room that smelled like fresh markers, a regulator from Brussels asked for a tour of our audit trail. I gave it to her. Every dual key, every emergency override request, every denial with a reason attached like a tag on a body. She put down her pen slowly. If you are lying, she said, you are very good at it. I am building a life that cannot afford a lie, I said. On our internal network, we pushed a live page, Ethics Board Docket. Anyone with a contract could read which deployments had raised a question and how we answered. Names redacted, decisions plain. An ombud email that went to a mailbox 3 of us could open and none of us could delete. Conrad stood beside me watching the page go live on a wall screen. This is going to make someone angry, he said. It is supposed to, I replied. Anger is a vital sign. When the event ended, people did not hustle out. They lingered the way families linger after a good funeral, sad, relieved, telling stories they had been carrying as weights. An engineer from a hospital whispered, "Thank you." A city CIO said, "I slept last night because of your stupid dual key." A journalist asked gently, "What did it cost you?" "Deals," I said, "sleep, a friend I thought I had, a version of myself that wore smaller shoes." "And what did it buy?" I looked at the wall of logs, at signatures in a ledger no one could edit, at a team that wore exhaustion like a medal they did not post on LinkedIn. The right to keep going. That evening, I found a quiet office and opened the folder no one else sees. Receipts. Not to punish, to remember. The first alert 6 months before the firing. Timestamp, IP, corridor camera still. A man who thought glass was a costume. The flash drive with the authentication patch. The napkin sketch of dual key from a diner at 2 a.m. The email from Elliot that said, "Stay the course." I closed it. I locked it. I set Aegis Veil to whisper if anyone touched it. On my way out, the building felt different. It had learned a posture. Not proud, not humbled, just aligned. At home, I watered the plant I had rescued from the cardboard box. It had grown 2 new leaves without asking permission. Outside, the street hummed like a good server rack. I stood at the window and let fatigue wash over me like a tide that knew when to stop. My phone buzzed one last time. System integrity verified. Public commitments matched to behavior. Monitoring continues. Good, I said, smiling to no one and to everything. So do we. The email subject line wore a suit. Request for limited exceptional access. Inside, it wore teeth. A national ministry wanted a private channel into a pilot we were running for their transit grid. Not a warrant, not a court order. An understanding between partners. Conrad forwarded it with a single sentence. We should consider. I walked down to his office with the kind of calm you earn. He was already standing, hands in pockets, windows full of city. They will walk if we refuse, he said. Then we let them walk, I answered. We did not build a guardian that sells gossip. He exhaled like a man pushing a stone uphill. Nova, no back doors, I said. We have said it in rooms, on stages, and in print. Walk it back once, and every promise we make turns to fog. He rubbed his temple. The board will ask. Then I will answer, I said, and sent a reply to the ministry that fit on one screen and did not apologize. Dual key or none. Audit or none. If they needed bulk access to citizens, ask a judge. If they needed the judge to be secret, we were the wrong vendor. An hour later, Elliot called. You are going to cost us a contract, he said cheerfully. I know, I replied. You are also going to buy us a reputation, he added. Keep going. That afternoon, Atlas Blackline took their shot. A courier delivered a leather folder engraved with my initials. Inside, an offer letter that smelled like expensive ink. Title with the word chief twice. Equity big enough to choke a calculator. A line promising freedom from theatrical constraints. I returned it with a post-it. Keep the leather. I prefer paper with witnesses. At 5, we held an internal town hall. I put the question on a slide without drama. What is a deal worth if it breaks the thing it buys? Hands went up. Engineers asked about edge cases. Sales asked about famine months. Ops asked what to do when a customer panics. We wrote the answers on a board and then wrote them into policy. Afterward, Lila walked me to the elevator. Do you ever get tired of being the wall? She asked softly. Sometimes, I said. Then I remember walls keep water in reservoirs and wolves out of nurseries. The elevator doors slid open. Inside, a junior analyst stood with his laptop clutched like a life vest. He glanced at my badge, then at his shoes. Ms. Park, he blurted. My mother works nights at St. Bridget's. She says their alarms used to chirp for ghosts. Last week they stopped. She says to tell you she slept. Tell me again about deals we should chase with our conscience. 3 days later, the ministry issued a statement about diverging philosophies. The press called. I gave them the line I had rehearsed with my pillow. We are not anti-government, we are pro-governance. Bring a warrant, bring an ombud, bring light. That evening, Aegis Veil pinged my wrist. Policy confirmation, external demand refused without dual key. Integrity matched. It had started complimenting us when our behavior tracked our words. I did not know I needed that until it arrived. The night cleaned the glass. In my office, the plant from the cardboard box had decided it was a tree. At 2 a.m, hospitals teach you about time. It stretches and snaps and stretches again. That is when the call came. St. Bridget's telemetry chattering nonsense. ICU monitors flooding the floor with alarms that meant fear more than failure. We were live in their network. Human in the loop, on call. I answered in 10 minutes because fear has my number. False positive storm, their night supervisor said. Voice steady, because some people are the spine for a living. On console, I said.
We see it. Aegis Veil had walled the noise. It had also paused a mitigation because our rule says no hands off the heart. A junior tech would have pressed the bright button labeled silence. Our system refused to let a button become a bullet. I pinged our on-call Ravi, 2 other engineers, 1 nurse we pay to sit in our rotation and tell us when design has forgotten human hands. Root cause? I asked. Ravi's screen shared like a trick. Telemetry firmware rolled back by 1 sub-vendor at 2130, he said. It drifted out of spec. Our classifier screamed. Good scream. Then we do the slow dance, I said. Whitelist as a patch, verify with a human, document with a clock. We rolled a targeted rule in 12 minutes. The storm quieted like a child in a new room. The supervisor exhaled. Thank you, she said, and then kept doing the job we designed for, breathing for other people. At 10 in the morning, a hospital lawyer called to say the word liability 3 different ways. I met them in a small conference room with a big table and poured water no one drank. You shut down alarms, he said. We delayed a mitigation for 12 minutes, I replied, per contract, per ethics. We wrote it together. He opened his folder. Our board is concerned. So am I said. Concern is how we do this without funerals. The chief of medicine joined the call late, hair wet from scrubbing, eyes clear. Counsel, she said gently. I was there. Your alarms lied. Their system refused to lie faster. We fixed the firmware vendor. We keep the guardian. The lawyer closed his folder. Not happy, not angry, just out of ammunition. We will need a report, he said. You will have it by tomorrow, I replied. Plain language, no theater. After they left, I walked to the lab and wrote a note to the ethics docket. Add rule. Vendor drift triggers vendor audit, not client blame. We shipped it that afternoon. That evening, a reporter called, asking if we had nearly killed patients. I told her the truth like a teacher. She ran the story anyway because outrage sells. Our comms team braced for spin. Then something odd happened. Nurses found the comments. Respiratory techs found them too. They posted at 3 in the morning from break rooms lit by vending machines. They told the story of alarms that lie and systems that wait for permission. Sometimes the best defense is not a rebuttal. It is the testimony of people who do not have time to lie. By Friday, the outrage cycle had moved on. Our inbox did not. 2 hospital networks asked for meetings. One included a line I underlined twice. We will accept your dual key and your slow dance. The board met the next week. Conrad presented revenue projections like a man balancing fire on a stick. I presented the St. Bridget's timeline, then placed one thing in the center, a printout of the night supervisor's post-shift note. They did not silence us. They asked. Sometimes, I said, the metric you need is a sentence. Silence. Elliot leaned forward. Then let us collect sentences too. We voted to add clinician testimonials to our quarterly review. One more graph the street cannot price, and we do not care. That afternoon, our receptionist waved me over. Someone left this, she said, holding a paper bag. Inside, a pastry box and a card. For the 12 minutes you refused to be fast and wrong. The pastry was almond. The card did not have a name. I wrote a thank you on our public page. Aegis Veil chimed a single line on my wrist. Behavior matched to stated value. Patience. The machine had started keeping us honest. Or maybe we had started keeping the machine human. The trail rarely arrives with trumpet music. It comes as a calendar invite that looks normal.
Atlas Blackline had a copy of a confidential slide we had shown 3 clients under non-disclosure. Not identical, close enough to feel my stomach tilt. I did not accuse. Accusation breeds theater. I asked Aegis Vale a question in code it knows is a prayer. Show provenance. It painted a map. File, birth, views, copies, screenshots. A blur at the edge where a camera tried to pretend it was a brain. The path ended at security, contractor portal, overnight badge office. We brought Dana in. We looped facilities and InfoSec. We set a trap that was just truth arranged like a mirror. A fake deck, a watermark woven into the spacing between words. A tiny variance in a blue no human eye loves. 2 nights later, the deck moved. We watched it walk out on a phone in a pocket, ride an elevator, pass a camera that remembered the shape of a jaw. The badge belonged to Arman Jafari, a contractor we inherited when we moved into the building. No prior, solid references, a newborn at home. When he arrived the next morning, we had coffee and counsel waiting. No drama, no raised voice. I told him what we knew. I showed him the watermark. I watched a young man fold himself into a chair like a letter. They offered money we do not have, he said, voice minimal. He said it was harmless. He said it was just slides. Who is he? Dana asked. Arman looked at the table. Atlas, a man named Rourke. He bought our stroller. I took a breath. I thought about my father's sentence. Believe paper with paper. I thought about a newborn in a crib and a man who sold ethics like strollers. We could call the police, Dana said quietly. We would win. We could also teach, I said. We offered Arman a narrow bridge, full confession on paper with names and dates. Restitution, a letter to the Ombud, a resignation with cause. We would pursue Atlas, not him. We would not ruin a family if we could ruin a behavior instead. He cried without noise. He signed. He handed over his phone and the cheap watch the other side had given him like a badge. We walked him to the door and did not humiliate him because humiliation makes good TV and bad people. Then we turned to Atlas. Dana drafted, then sharpened, then froze a letter. Evidence attachments numbered in double digits. Legal words designed to be read first by counsel and then, if necessary, by a court that likes footnotes. Elliot added a paragraph that smelled like money and patience. We sent it to their board with a timestamp and a tone that said, "Fix this quietly or bleed publicly." Atlas called within 24 hours. The strategist who had tried to hire me sounded like a person who had practiced contrition in the mirror and finally meant it. "We fired him," she said. "We will certify deletion. We will apologize in writing. We will pay the stipend for the contractor's family for 6 months." "Make it 12, I said, "and add a scholarship for a security student who writes an ethics essay that makes you sweat." Silence. Then, done. We posted a short note on our transparency page. An attempted leak occurred. We contained it. We supported the harmed family. We required our competitor to fund an ethics scholarship. The work continues. No names, no victory lap, just receipts with the numbers turned into sentences. Conrad stopped by my office doorway later, hands empty. "You could have humiliated them," he said. "We do policy," I replied, "not theater." He nodded once. He has learned to do that, single nods that hold a lot. That evening, Lila sent me a screenshot of the scholarship application page going live. We named it for no one and everyone. The Guardian's Promise. First prompt, describe a time you refused to be fast and wrong. On my way out, I took the long route past security. The guard on duty looked up from a crossword. "Rough week?" he asked. "Important," I said. He grinned. "The important ones are always rough." Outside, the air smelled like rain that had decided to hold. My phone buzzed. Aegis Vale again, only this time it felt like a friend's hand on your shoulder. Insider exfiltration ring neutralized. Collateral minimized. Monitoring continues. I looked up at a sky that wore a thin moon like a coin you keep for luck. Good work, I told the night. All of us. Annual meetings are theaters that hire accountants. Ours took place in a hotel ballroom with chandeliers that pretended not to judge. Rows of chairs, a lectern, a screen tall enough to make lies look small. Outside, cameras waited for anything to look like blood. Conrad opened with numbers. Revenue up, churn down, incidents contained. He moved like a conductor who trusts the strings. Then he invited questions from the floor, the part of the ritual where certainty puts on flats and walks carefully. A man stood, tailored suit, immaculate pocket square, the kind of shareholder who thinks patience is a rounding error. Dual key costs us deals, he said. You are confusing morals with margins. Remove the clause. I stepped forward before the mic could cool. I am Nova Park. We wrote dual key because we intend to survive our own success. We cannot sell security with one hand and create insecurity with the other. He smiled the way people smile at children. Do not moralize, monetize. Gladly, I said, and tapped the screen. We walked them through a year of receipts that wore numbers like armor. Customer lifetime value from clients who cited our ethics as the reason they stayed. Recruitment velocity since we stopped asking people to work somewhere that betrayed their sleep. Incident severity before and after no backdoor was tattooed into our contracts. A swing in brand sentiment that correlated not with ad spend, but with public transparency dockets they could read without translation. Now the other column, I said. Deals we did not sign. Their names redacted, their demands not. Data hoarding ministries, surveillance-happy cities, buyers who wanted us to look the other way. The room murmured when they recognized a few shadows. If we had taken those, I said, we would have booked short-term gain and long-term rot. When rot hits a ledger, it is already in the beams. A woman in the second row, gray hair like a crown, stood without the mic. I am a retired teacher, she said. I bought 10 shares because I like how you talk to nurses. Keep the clause. Laughter, and then sudden applause, the kind that arrives like weather. The pocket square investor sat down, narrowed eyes doing math he had not planned to do. Conrad nodded to me with the only smile he allows himself in public. Small. Real. The next question had clause. Is it true your system once generated internal ethics reports on your own executives? This from a blogger who made rumors marketable. Yes, I said. Gasps scattered like birds. In internal testing months ago, Aegis Vale flagged unauthorized behaviors. We confronted them. We corrected governance. We wrote policy so rank cannot erase logs. We are not proud we needed the lesson. We are proud we wrote it down. Someone clapped once, a ridiculous noise in such a room. Then others joined, and the chandelier finally approved. After the vote, board slate confirmed, charter updated to enshrine dual key in bylaws, we opened the lobby doors to press. Questions hurled, cameras blinked. It was nearly over when a familiar voice rose from the back. Atlas Blackline's strategist, pretending to be a journalist. Miss Park, is there a world where you drop the theater and sell what the world actually buys? I am selling exactly that, I said. Protection that does not require confession after. I recognize theater, though. You are standing in it. Her mouth twitched. The cameras ate every frame. We ended the day with a quiet dinner of people who had suffered on our behalf and people who had not yet. Elliot raised a glass. To profit, he said, and to the reasons it deserves to exist. I kept my glass low and watched the team. Lila, exhausted, still catching details before they fell.
Dana scribbling a clause even now. Ravi telling a story with his hands.
Aegis Vale pinged my wrist. Public commitments matched to governance update. Integrity tracked. Good, I whispered. Keep reading us aloud. The inquiry letter came on polite letterhead stamped with the weight of Brussels. They wished to discuss compliance and risk, which is how regulators say, "We heard a noise." They asked gently for us to bring everything. We flew in on a Sunday, slept badly, and walked into a glass conference room on Monday that made secrets look allergic. 3 commissioners, 2 staffers, and a carafe of water that tasted like the inside of a law. The lead commissioner, a woman with a mathematician's eyes, folded her hands. "Ms. Park, your public commitments are unusual. We would like to test their shape." "By all means," I said. They began with simple questions and sharpened until the table felt like a blade. Data minimization at the edge. Model drift when vendors sneeze. Bias in threat classification. Appeal when a mitigation pauses a system someone insists is fine. For each, we had receipts, not slogans. "Show us your ethics docket," she said. We did. The whole thing. Redactions in place, decisions legible, reversals cataloged, apologies preserved like fossils so we could remember what hurt. "Show us a denied executive override," she said. We did. Timestamps, dual key refusal, the follow-up where policy was clarified so it would not happen twice. "Show us your worst day," she said. We did. St. Brigid's false positive storm, the 12-minute dance, the vendor audit that followed, the nurse's note we now read quarterly to inoculate ourselves against speed. Silence is a vote, sometimes. She turned to her staff and spoke in the dry poetry of governance. Precedent. Voluntary transparency above code. Recommendation. Adopt dual key as a model clause in critical infrastructure guidelines. Note. Firm declined demand for exceptional access without ombud. Weight. High. Conrad exhaled so softly, only the glass noticed. The staffers scribbled. The mathematician watched me like a theorem was choosing to hold. After, in a hallway that smelled like polished stones, she walked beside me. "You know this will cost you," she said without malice. "It already did," I replied. "It also paid." She stopped, then smiled the kind of smile people file in a drawer. "I hope you are right. Either way, thank you for the logs." On the flight home, we sat in a row without speaking. Lila sent me a photo from the office, a wall covered in sticky notes from employees answering a prompt. "What rule made your work kinder?" Someone had written, "The one where we stop apologizing for doing it right." My wrist buzzed. Aegis Vale again. External audit matched to internal records. Drift. Negligible. Continue. I closed my eyes and slept like a person who had finally taught a machine to hold a line she could live with. When we landed, a note from Elliot. "Regulators will cite you. Prepare to be the example people resent until they depend on it." Beneath it, a line from one of our earliest clients. "We just won a grant because your policy exists." The ledger was getting interesting. We held a company meeting and I told the truth like it was a normal thing. We will be cited. We will be studied. We will be blamed when people confuse speed with care. We will still do it this way. Ravi raised his hand. "Can I put that on a sticker?" "Yes," I said. "Spell blamed correctly." Laughter shook the room loose. Outside, the city had decided to be kind for an afternoon. Even the elevators were on their best behavior. You cannot be transparency adjacent. You are, or you mark it. We chose the former and invited a third-party auditor with a reputation for making founders cry. Sable and Finch arrived with laptops that looked like knives and a tone that promised no favors. For 2 weeks, they lived in our logs. They asked questions we did not want. They opened files I had not read since the night I wrote them. They interviewed everyone, from our receptionist who knows who trembles at the door to the senior engineer who never does. They pinned one memo to the wall and turned to me. "Here, said the lead auditor, a person whose eyebrows were policy. "You delayed a mitigation for a client's political event in a city square. Why?" "Crowd safety," I said. "False positive risk was non-trivial. We chose to escalate with a human commander on site instead of letting a classifier decide people's bodies." "You took a reputational hit," they said. "We banked the right kind of interest," I replied. "The city CIO sent us a thank you. The mayor did not. I can sleep with one of those." They flagged a bug in a red team harness I had signed off on. It could have obscured a misclassification. Not exploitable by outsiders, but sloppy. I wanted to explain. I did not. "We will fix it and read the fix out loud," I said. They noted an edge case where dual key took too long because an ombud was on a plane. We rewrote the role. A rotating 3-person council with one always on duty, empowered to act within narrow lanes, forced to report at dawn. At the end, Sable and Finch presented their findings in our largest conference room. Engineers, ops, sales, legal, comms, security, the night janitor who does not like chairs that leave scuffs. Everyone joined. Their verdict did not flatter. It did something better. "This company tells the truth," the lead said. "Not always the first day. Always by the time it matters. Your dual key slowed 2 incidents and saved 4. Your governance stopped 3 executive misbehaviors before they were culture. Your transparency cost you 5 contracts and gained you 9. Your worst habits are version drift and the founder's pride in certain corners. Fix both." I nodded like someone had just sanded a beam. "We will." We published the report with redactions that guarded nothing but personal secrets. The blog post did not shout. It documented what we broke, what we fixed, what we still owe. The internet, surprised, behaved for a morning. By week's end, 3 clients asked for copies to show their own boards. A journalist wrote a piece titled, "The Company That Admits It Bleeds." They meant it as praise. It read like permission. Conrad came to my office door at dusk, a paper coffee in his hand. "You know," he said, "I thought leadership was never letting them see you sweat. Turns out, it is letting them see you mop." "We are building a house," I said. "Houses get messy." He smiled, and for the first time since the lab, the smile reached his eyes. On my way out, I stopped by the plant that had decided it was a tree. I turned the pot a quarter turn so it would not grow crooked reaching for one source of light. On my wrist, the companion pinged its simple poem. "Audit complete. Flaws owned. Corrections live. Watching." "Same," I whispered, and went home. 6 months after Brussels, on a gray morning that smelled like rain and printer ink, we gathered in the atrium. No stage, no badge scanners, just people on stairs and floors, coffee cups held like small shields. A live stream blinked to clients who had become correspondents. In the center, a lectern, a single page, and a pen that writes even when you hold it wrong. "We built a machine that can hear footsteps," I began. "We taught it to ask permission, to leave receipts, to tell on us when we forget the person behind the pattern. That was the easy part. Laughter, small and real. The hard part is living in public. We will be wrong. We will be late. We will refuse money that does not keep faith. We will log our apologies and our repairs. When we are tempted to trade a principle for a headline, we will go for a walk and come back with an answer we can say out loud." I looked up at the faces, new hires with eyes like antennas, veterans who now relax their shoulders in hallways, the night crew who know where the building sighs. "We are going to read something together," I said, and lifted the page. It was not long. It was not legalese. It was an oath in plain English. The kind of text you could hand to a nurse on a night shift, or a teacher in a classroom, or a regulator who forgot why she started. We guard people, not just networks. We do not build secret doors. We write our mistakes down. We do not humiliate, we repair. We remember that speed is not love. We invite eyes. We stay worthy of the keys we hold. When in doubt, we choose the sentence we would want read over our names. We read it together, voices shaky at first, then steady, then strong. When we finished, no applause, just a quiet that felt like a room locking into plum. After, in the current of hugs and texts and someone's toddler trying to eat a name tag, I slipped upstairs. The lab hummed. Aegis Vale watched the way only a guardian can. It pinged my wrist with a line that made my throat sting. Oath recorded, monitoring for drift. Wake me if you change. I will, I said. Wake me if I do. I took the long way out past the wall where we post sentences that saved us. The nurse's line from St. Bridget's, the teacher's 10 shares, the sticky note that said we stopped apologizing for doing it right. I added one more on a square of paper the color of lemons. The important ones are always rough. Security guard, night shift. Outside the rain had become mist. The city looked like a circuit that had decided to be kind. I put my hand on the cool glass of the lobby, a habit now, like touching wood, like saying a name. At the curb, a courier waited with a box. Inside, a plaque made of reclaimed server aluminum, brushed and warm. It read, "The Guardian's Promise, first scholarship awarded." Underneath, a name I did not know yet, and a line from the winning essay. I refused to be fast and wrong. I smiled all the way to the street. Onward, I whispered to the day, to the plant that would need a bigger pot, to the machine that would wake me if I drifted, to the team that would ask me to read it again. Onward, the doors answered and opened. If this story made you exhale, if you felt the click when a promise turns into policy, tell me one sentence you want read over your name 20 years from now. Drop it in the comments. I'll put a few on our wall. And if you're building something that needs a guardian, remember, the best security is a series of small, stubborn choices you can say aloud without flinching. Like, subscribe. Next week, a true story about a public contract that tried to buy a back door, and the city that chose light instead.